Okay, so your whole comment is really interesting, and I did want to showcase the whole thing. So you said you've never even thought about it. See, the issue with making every character so powerful for cool points is that there need to be things they can't do. But SJM, I swear to God, hasn't thought not one of these things through. And it's said that Azrael doesn't like feel bad for what he does. My take is that he personally has no moral against it, but he knows that others do, and that it makes him othered and evil by comparison. He's apathetic about the pain he causes. What hurts him is that it makes him hard to love and scary to even his family, and he sees himself as dirtying Elain because of this. And I think that that's a valid take, but it doesn't ring super true to me, that part, just because I feel like his personal narration would have touched on that. He's just like, oh, like people feel weird about around me. I guess it's because of this, but I don't really understand it, that kind of thing. That would mean that his like internal narration and his like self-loathing thoughts that only he can hear inside his own head are performance. And I don't know how I feel about that. Like, we don't have a whole lot of like canonical characterization for Azrael to begin with, and the bonus chapter is the closest that we get. I would hate to see that in itself be performance. That being said, though, I do feel like there is a way that this logic could work, and it involves me having to introduce a theory and a motif and just an idea that I have been terrorizing other ACOTAR fans with for several weeks now. I think I need to introduce the idea to y'all at large of serial killer Elain. Before anybody comes for me on this, I'm not going to be retconning anything or like retroactively redefining anything. This is just from the little characterization that we have of Elain so far. I think that this could really work. Let's go back to the beginning. Elain, Nesta, and Farah, they are all in a fucked up household with parents that aren't really raising them. The mother is abusive from what little we've seen of her. The dad is really neglectful, and these girls are running the household. And what we know about it from ACOTAR 1 is from Farah's perspective, like very limited perspective, she's doing everything. Like, she's going out, she's getting the meat, she's making the money, that kind of stuff. Then, like, as we expand a little bit, we learn that Nesta was taking care of the household. She was neglecting her own self, and like she was working really hard to preserve her things because they really didn't have this money, and Nesta was trying not to be more of a burden on Farah than she already was. And we can glean from there that Nesta doesn't really value like her own contributions to the household. Like, what she did wasn't flashy, but she was very clearly taking care of the household while Farah was out hunting. Elain's book, which I'm pretty sure is next, it should expand that perspective out even further. Like, we know now what Nesta has contributed or not contributed to the household and how she feels about those contributions. But we don't really know what Elain did. Like, Elain might have stood by and taken care of the dad, but Farah doesn't seem very cognizant of what Elain is doing in the household, and neither does Nesta. So it stands to reason that Elain also did something significant and overlooked to preserve the family while they were in poverty, or even before that. My theory stems from these three sisters doing something that only that sister could do, but in a way that the other sisters wouldn't understand or notice the contribution. So Farah went out hunting, and that was a huge sacrifice for her, and that was something where she gave up her childhood essentially to feed her family. Nesta was taking care of the household, and she was doing things that even she didn't understand to be valuable at the time. What if Elain was in the background killing their abusers? I think Elain's illustrious killing career would begin with the grandmother, because serial killers, they tend to start at home. Grandma, by all accounts, was not a very nice person. Nesta goes out of her way to say that the grandma was abusive and that kind of thing. And it's not really touched upon in ACOSF, which makes me think it's going to get touched upon again in Elain's story. I could easily see a young Elain working in her garden and like putting stuff together and killing the grandma by accident by like, you know, making a tea out of something that she misidentified or something like that. Like, she gives this grandma like this tea, or she like a tincture or something, and the grandma dies because of it. And Elain like holds that guilt, And then she finds out that the grandma was abusing Nesta. And at that point, she's like, oh. I think that Elain wouldn't be actively killing at this point. I think it would still be horrifying to her that her mistake killed her grandma. But then that ball happens where a 14-year-old Nesta dances with and then is proposed to by a grown-ass man. And Nesta rejects the proposal, and we never hear about what happens to that guy after that. Like, considering like the entitlement of like a lot of the men characters, the bad guy men characters that we've seen, I'm surprised that that guy never tried to get her again if he was that obsessed with her after one dance. And I have to wonder, was he just shuffled off to the corner of the story, or was he dealt with? And that would be the first time that Elain makes that poison on purpose to get that to get that guy out of the picture. Whether Elain was involved in the death of the mom, I'm not sure. I think it would depend on a lot of different factors. But as in my serial killer theory brain, I think she has Nesta Suter and the grandmother under her belt by the time that Tamlin comes for Feyre. So 2 kills. I think a really interesting dynamic for Elain's book, if serial killer Elain exists, is how she feels about all this stuff morally. If she decides to kill someone, does she need a reason? But does she need a good reason? That kind of thing. So a serial killer Elain Elriel story would be about these 2 killers who have done unspeakable things for their families in the name of their families, dealing with the moral juxtaposition of what they do and the fact that neither of them are sullying anyone. Azriel's thinking that Elain is like this pure person who is like the best thing that's ever happened to him, and that if he touches her, she's going to be just like him. But Elain is just like him, might even be worse. I don't know. I think Elriel could just go in a whole lot of different directions because of the characters and their potential and their chemistry and the different themes of like personal choice and all of that. I think this could be really, really, really cool. And this is also hints of stuff that I'm dropping in my fanfic. So if I ever make the Elriel sequel to my Nearest fanfic, this is the storyline I'm going with. I also think that serial killer Elain doesn't discriminate. I do think that Lucian would work in this scenario as well. I don't think it works as well, but I do think that Lucian and Elain would be able to talk about, their shared dark pasts in this way. And I think Lucian, would see a new side of Elain, and that she's not delicate. She's not the person that the Night Court should be coddling. If anything, they should be afraid of her. And I think if Lucian and Elain end up together and Elain is a serial killer, Lucian would be the one to be like, give this girl some fucking credit. And that would endear Elain to him, and I think it would be really nice. And I think it would be a good story. I want this more, but I just wanted to say, like, serial killer Elain does not discriminate to me. I think all the ACOTAR ships as a whole have had different themes, like, going into them. And this is even including the non-canonical ones and the crack ship ones. There is generally an idea holding them together. Phasand is the idea of fate and inevitability and finding your person even in the depths of, like, the most horrible thing you can go through. And that, I guess that's nice. Whatever, like, they're fine. Nessian, and I guess Neris too, they are stories about feeling like you're the worst person in the world and someone loving you despite all of those things and because of all of those things. It's a story about acceptance, and it's a story about, deep-seated chemistry. And even to get into like some side ships that we don't think about very often, like someone like Amarin and Varian, they're about like love opening you up to your humanity and how love can teach you things that you would not have known had you not met that person. A serial killer Elain story, whether it be Lucian or Elriel, mostly Elriel, it would be a story about no matter how irredeemable you think you are, no matter what you've done, someone will love you for it, and they will love you because of it. Like, it's not a story I can make you better. It's you are good just the way you are. And we need that in this franchise.